Welcome to the Love That For You podcast, where every week you're invited to dream big, laugh often, and celebrate the extraordinary stories of those who inspire. Your story matters, and I love that for you. Hey friends, before we jump into our conversation, I just wanted to remind you, if you don't know already, I actually host another podcast called Queen City Connect. This is a podcast that celebrates the dreamers, the doers, and the change makers of Charlotte, North Carolina. If that sounds like something that would interest you, I would love for you to go check it out on any podcast platform, even the one you're listening to right now. We would absolutely love that. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, rate and review, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. We also have an Instagram page that you can follow along to see who all of the incredible small business owners and nonprofits and creatives that make up Charlotte, North Carolina are at. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, we would love for you to listen in. Thanks, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, I am so excited to share with you our sponsor. According to the National Institute of Health, over 23 million miscarriages occur worldwide every year. In the United States, 1 in 4 women has experienced pregnancy loss. Delivering an angel baby, one born without a heartbeat, is a traumatic and life-altering experience, one that comes with increased risk of anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even suicide. Nicole Chrysler is the mother of an angel baby. Her son, Evan James, was born November 8th, 2023, after having died at 13 weeks gestation. One thing that helped ease her grief was the handmade hat, blanket, and wrap that the hospital gave her for her son. They were a beautiful keepsake and a reminder that her son and his life mattered. When Evan was born, though, he only weighed 22 grams, less than an ounce, and was 4 inches long. Because he was so small, his hat was too big, and while Nicole didn't mind that at all, it did give her an idea to make and crochet and donate items in several sizes so that each baby would have something in the perfect size. This idea has grown to what is now called Evan's Box. Currently, hospitals in more than 14 states have an Evan's Box. Our goal is to have an Evan's Box in at least one hospital in each state. We would love to invite you to become a part of this important mission. To find out more to see how you can help, please visit evansbox.org. I am so excited.
We're here. We're doing this.
Did I put on lip gloss? I think I'm good. Am I good?
You look great.
Okay, you look great. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Love That For You podcast. I am here with one of my best friends in the world, Christa Robinson.
So glad to be here.
Christa does not live in Charlotte, but she drove up to Charlotte to be a part of this podcast.
Yeah, I did.
Which is so exciting.
But before you think too highly of me, Morgan has made the trek to come see me just as far. After I had my daughter, you came for a few hours, a couple weeks after she was born, sat there, and then got in your car and drove back.
That was such a fun day.
It was a fun day.
And I would do it again.
It was kind of a fog for me.
It was a fog for me too.
But the fact that you showed up in my life at that time and we're like, I'm not going to be entertained. I'm just going to sit here with you and hold the baby and then drive back home.
That's all I wanted.
It was huge.
Yeah. So. And I think what a lot of people might not realize, which is totally fine that they don't realize this, but as someone who is in my early 30s and I'm not married and I don't have kids, I still love babies. And so when my friends have babies, I'm like, can I just hang out with you? Can I just do it? I'll bring Starbucks. I just want to look at your baby. You change your baby, but I'll hold the baby.
Yes.
When you have exciting life moments, I'm like, oh, look at me having another exciting life moment.
I love that. I love that. That's
you love
amazing.
that for me?
That's true friendship. Love that for you.
I love it. So what's really cool about this episode is actually when we're finished recording this, we are going to record another episode for Christa's podcast.
Yes.
So I'll let you in just a second give everyone a 30-second pitch on what that podcast is so that everyone, when they're done listening to this, can go listen to that episode because we are going to do more of a deep dive in our actual career of what we do.
Yes, we are.
So go ahead and give us that 30-second pitch of just what that podcast is so that people know where to go find it when they're done listening to this episode.
Absolutely. So we launched this past year, we launched the Uncapped Photographer podcast. And the purpose of that was as I've grown into my business, I wanted to have more and more free content accessible to people to be able to hear. And it actually stemmed, Morgan, my coach had me on her podcast and she had formerly done in-person sales before she pivoted to now teaching coaches how to coach. And as we were talking back and forth, I saw we're able just to share a lot more of the value of this and what we're doing on a podcast when it's not a blog post where you kind of have to write everything down. It's not short Instagram stories cutting you off every 30 seconds, but like we really can just share so much more of the value of it for people who do get really nervous and get stuck in their businesses and need to know, yeah, there's a better way to do this. And so hop over there. It's called the Uncapped Photographer Podcast so that you can hear more about Morgan's journey as well as my own. We've grown together in a lot of ways. We implement very similar strategies. We've just taken it in different routes. We've had actually the same coach before. Yeah. And I'm just excited to deep dive in with you there about uncapping your sessions and how that's evolved your business and how that's changed for both of us.
Yeah, it's going to be such a fun conversation.
Yeah.
And I think you crushed it. And like social media is so great for those short conversations, those 30-second, hey, here's an encouragement, or even like a minute reel is great. But it's like, we need to go to the next level. Let's do a little bit more of a deep dive. And you are so gracious. I mean, Christa has done the work. She is not where she is today because of an accident. Like, you have put in a lot of work. So for you to get on and record a podcast is honestly the most gracious thing. Like, we should be paying for this podcast because you're just giving out information that, frankly, like, you had to pay for to learn what you did. And of course, people aren't just walking away and becoming millionaires. Like, they have to then put in the work to see results in their business.
Totally.
But it's just super gracious of you to have that platform. And I'm so glad you do, because I feel like you're so good with words, and like your voice is very soothing. And it's just, even if you're not a photographer, go listen to this podcast.
Morgan has such the gift of encouragement. But also, Morgan, I know for you and I feel like the moment we get into the car together, we've said before, what if we had just recorded this?
Yeah.
Like the things we bounce off of each other, the things that we dive into each other so deeply, like right off the bat, is, I feel like, very unique.
Yeah.
We're unique, awesome people.
We are amazing.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would love to share your story. I'd love for you to share your story of a little bit less technical of what you're doing with photography, because we're going to talk about that on Uncapped, but just your story of who you are. This is a very story-driven podcast. I love having guests sit in this chair or having virtual conversations of just being like, where you are today is really cool, but like, we want to see how you got there, because there's a lot of people and they feel like they're at the beginning of their journey, or they're in the middle of their journey, or they're ready for a pivot and they don't know the steps to take to get wherever that is. And I just firmly believe that having a medium like this podcast where people can listen and hear, okay, this person got here, but it took her all of these lessons. So I can just be encouraged to keep on doing what I'm doing, make the next right step, the next right choice. It's just like really encouraging hearing people's stories behind where they've gotten to get to where they are today. So go ahead and share with us as little or as much about you that you feel comfortable doing.
Well, let's start here too, Morgan, because I know your listeners love you. And Morgan is kind of like intertwined into the story a bit. And one thing unique about Morgan and I is we first became friends when were you still in college?
Yeah.
We were both in college. I think you reached out and said, hey, if you ever need a second shooter,
on Facebook Message.
Yeah, on Facebook Messenger.
I remember
back in the day,
sitting at my dorm room desk, sending you that Facebook message. We could probably find it.
Yeah, I think we could.
Continue. Sorry.
Okay. Clip to that. Okay. So Morgan messages me and I'm like, actually, yes. Now, the weddings I was booking, was getting going. I had shifted to weddings from portrait sessions. So let me back up a sec. In college, was doing photography. I did portraits. Can't really screw that up too much. Shifted to weddings. And at a wedding, it's great to have a second shooter, which is someone coming alongside, just kind of helping you out. I'm trying to remember, Morgan, if we met at the wedding or if we met before.
We met before.
Okay.
So we met at like 6 a.m. at the Starbucks in Greer.
I remember. So Morgan and I meet up and instantly just hit it off. And I'm sure we're both kind of quirky people. I'm sure we both kind of like played it down a little bit at first.
Yeah, I don't remember the conversation a ton. But like, before that day was over, we had told each other every nitty-gritty detail about our love lives, our family lives.
Okay, and we were both going through very big like personal life events too.
Yeah.
And very connected like instantly over that.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we shot together, but more on the like relationship side, we connected just very deeply. And Morgan is one of those people that you meet and she feels like your best friend in a matter of minutes, that you're like, I could tell anything to you. Like where you're like, I have never told anyone this before, but I'm going to tell you this, even though we just met. It was kind of like that. So we connect at that wedding. I continue doing weddings. She's doing weddings. So we're both doing weddings and it's great.
Yeah.
And we second shoot for each other. It's so fun.
And at this point too, I was just going to say, you're pursuing this as your business.
Yes.
For me, we're both still in college at this point. Yeah. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm in the middle of getting an elementary education degree. So I'm like having to do practicums and all of that. Yeah. But I know I like taking pictures, which is probably why I just sent you that random like, hey, if you need someone to help you, I'd love to learn type of message. Yeah. So lesson number 1 is put yourself out there and send that message to someone, because that moment changed my life and it gave me a best friend.
Yeah.
So like
exactly
2 for 2.
Yeah. And Morgan was the type of person like after a bad day would just like pick me up from campus or would text me and be like, hey, come on over and pick me up. And like, we would just do that. And it's so great to have a friendship like that. But that is something, going back to what I was saying, unique about Morgan and I is, yes, we connected very deeply on a personal level, but also in our businesses. So as I was building and growing, I graduated from college. I remember going over to Morgan's house and like editing, and we would do like, you know, between doing our pool parties and things like that, just 2 girls.
Forgot about the pool parties.
2 girls gallivanting through life. So we're doing all the things, shopping, building our businesses and such. And I'm building my photography business. I get married. Morgan's in the wedding. It was a glorious, beautiful day. She was just wonderful in so many ways on that day. And I decided to continue building weddings. And I'll never forget, Morgan, the moment that Edward looked at me in the car and said, we are not going to be a husband and wife photo team. And granted, he had said that before in his Edward way, but at that moment, I was building towards something, and I would see these husband and wife photographers and think,
I was going to say, pause for a second and explain to someone who is like, I don't know what that means to be a husband and wife photography team, and what that means as a photographer who wants that.
Totally. So you see these husband and wife teams, and that means I feel like she's often the main shooter, but sometimes it can be switched. I recently have a student, it's the opposite, where one of them's the main photographer, one of them's the second shooter. So every weekend they go do these weddings together, and it's awesome for them. Like, how fun to get to like marry someone and be with your spouse that weekend. Yeah. So of course, dating Edward, I dragged him to a few weddings and was like, come on, babe.
Welcome to your new life.
It's a package deal here. So he's coming to weddings, and honestly, Morgan, he just does not feel the same passion as I do.
He's so supportive.
So supportive. I think you've probably been to a wedding that Edward was at too. Yeah. You were. Even recently when I was super pregnant. Yeah. Even at the beginning and even lately. And he's there for the support. He's not there for the creativity when it comes to photography. And that's okay. It's not for everyone. Your partner can still support you even if they're not doing exactly what you're doing. Yeah. However, as I grew and shifted and as I was building, I was obviously marrying Edward, and we got married. I get hit paying taxes, and I'm like, holy cow, I really want to bring my income up. I really wanted to get to that next level. And you and I would talk about like all the things with business and building and, growing. And I did make a big shift into portraits. And around that time, you also did.
Yep.
And we then built that way together and were able to serve our clients. We're sitting in Morgan's beautiful studio. She has pictures around. She has this beautiful like backdrop set up behind us. Like, you can serve clients so intentionally and so well as a photographer, being full service, charging what you need to charge so that you can give them that experience. You and I both had come from like the shoot and burn aspect of things.
Yep.
And that transition was challenging in a lot of ways. I almost quit several times, but that shift led to like the most incredible results for our family, for myself personally. And I've continued since running with that. Obviously on the Uncapped Photography podcast, it is a shift to education. I now have a coaching program where I teach that, which is not, I know, the purpose of this podcast, but those shifts, Morgan, I think back, and both being believers happened at just the right time. So this past year, I had my daughter. Mm-hmm. You were one of the very first people. I was sitting in the doctor's office. I found out when I was due. Edward's ecstatic, and I'm sitting there blowing up your phone like, when are you free? Can you take these weddings?
Yeah.
And that is the only thing I really cried about in pregnancy, was like the work and life balance of it, of like, I've committed to these couples.
Yeah.
I was counting on this income, and I'm not a dingbat. I know how you get pregnant, but like, truthfully, it still took me a bit by surprise when I found the exact due date,
And that might be an encouragement for someone listening. That's like a lot of these stereotypical life moments that are for the most part very exciting, very happy. Like, that's a real raw moment of, okay, like I am excited, but like my life is about to change. I have had that conversation with personal friends of mine who have done gender reveal parties, and they find out it's this gender and they were hoping for this other gender. And of course they love their child, but like they were like, I kind of wanted this. And like, I think just normalizing that,
it's okay to be disappointed.
It's okay to be excited and disappointed at the same time. And I feel like you did that beautifully of like, okay, I am excited, but my life is going to change. And I feel like you also did it in a very responsible way. As soon as you found out, I was literally sitting Do you know where I was when you texted me?
No, I don't.
I was at Disney with my family. And so now I'm just like, all I want to do is tell my family that Christa's pregnant. And I just held that as a secret.
And y'all, it was early. Our parents did not even know.
That means so much to me. I had another friend literally yesterday tell me that she's pregnant and she has not told anyone else.
Oh, well, now's the perfect time to announce it for her.
Congratulations.
Surprise, mom and dad, your grandparents. No, totally.
First time.
Yeah, but Morgan, like I had so much anxiety over that. I was so stressed, and basically it happened sooner than we had thought it would happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had booked these weddings. I had committed to these brides. One of them I'd already done her engagement photos for. So it was like, well, shoot, if I was a bride and my photographer got knocked up, I'd be a little bit like, was I not in your radar? And I did handle it as responsibly as I could. Yeah. Made everything right financially with those, with those clients, and they were wonderful. It will make me emotional if I go into how awesome and supportive they were. And I think, like you said, we assume the worst about us, that everyone's going to hate us. They're going to be so, bummed that we're upsetting their day. And all of them were like, that's awesome. Thanks for letting us know. Some of them I think I could have made work, and Edward was like, they do not want a 9.5. Well, hopefully not 9.5. They don't want an 8.5 pregnant person at their wedding. Yeah, right. And when towards the end there, Edward came, I hired a team of photographers. When
I helped you out, you were pretty pregnant. Do you know how pregnant you were?
No, Morgan, it's all a blur when you're that pregnant.
The camera was just resting on the belly.
It was. At one point, Morgan, low moment for me. Okay, very last wedding I'm shooting, okay? And we're at the reception, and it's at this club in my town. And this gentleman who had too many drinks comes up to me and sets his alcoholic beverage onto my belly and said, look, it stays there.
No.
Yes, Morgan. Yes.
No.
Keep in mind, I had just finished photographing a wedding. I was
I should not be laughing or smiling. That is actually terrible, but I'm also picturing it.
Weird things happen at weddings. Yeah. Okay? I feel like we could have an episode all about weird things that happen. I have never been so close to wanting to hurt someone at a wedding.
That is terrible.
It was awful. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Don't do that to your pregnant friends.
I want to know would a plate fit too?
Probably could have. I was very pregnant. But you were one of the first people I reached out to.
Yeah.
I did plan that accordingly. Everyone always says, you'll figure it out. And you do. But there is some work that goes into it.
Yeah.
As I was, making this shift to Morgan, I found out I was expecting, and I had been building up my education business that same year. And it was amazing to see how the Lord had used that shift where I did have my daughter and I had a team that kept things running. Students were supported. I did not have one student reach out and say, hey, I didn't get the support I needed while I took that step back with my daughter. Right. And that was really an amazing thing to see. And again, that you have been a friend through every season. When I was kind of phasing weddings out, you were as well taking your business another way. And having friends like that you can grow with. Morgan and I were saying one thing really unique about us is often you have friends in different seasons of your life that are really impactful. For me, when I became a mom, I became really close to, more mom friends. When there were times when I was starting my business that I was really close with other, photographers who were just getting going, right? Yeah. And we might not be as close now, but you needed those people in your life at those times. You are one of the friends that we have stayed very consistently in each other's lives. You've had 2 moves since we've lived in the same city. You've had different people in and out of your life I've gotten to see. You were the friend with Edward. Can I tell a funny story about that? I was thinking on the way here.
Yes, please do. Oh no.
So one of our first,
I don't know what you're about to say.
Okay. There was a time you and I were going to Charleston. I can't remember why we were going to Charleston.
Okay. We've done that a few times.
You had a shoot. Maybe I had a shoot. Maybe we both had a shoot. We've done it a few times.
Yeah.
Around that time I was talking to Edward, kind of interested in him, still kind of figuring out, I'm interested in him. And, I think he's interested in me. Where is this kind of going? And I'm excited for a girls' trip with Morgan. Now, Edward also knew you before Edward and I dated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had mutual friends in college.
Same circles.
Same circle.
Same church, I think, too.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm excited for this girls' trip with Morgan. And I mentioned it to Edward and he goes, Oh, you're going to Charleston with Morgan? Okay. Yeah. And I was like, would you like to come with us? And he was like, yeah, I would. And it wasn't that, Morgan, I was not going to invite him. It just didn't have, it didn't really cross my mind. It was kind of like girls' trip.
Right.
And he came and we had the best time, the 3 of us.
I'm now remembering that car ride.
It was so fun.
That was so fun.
And that was the beginning of our relationship. And
that's when I took the picture of you on his back crossing the street with your Vineyard Vines bag.
House. Yes. I love that one. And you've been one of those friends that every season, from dating, obviously you were part of our wedding day, to, even before that, when I would cry over a breakup before Edward, right?
Yeah.
You really have been consistent in every season. Even as I've grown my business and had growing pains, you have that small, intimate group of people at the table that are watching you make these shifts and that are genuinely there for you. And even though we might go a couple months without talking, we would then like hit each other up and just talk back and forth and fill each other in. And you are one of the friends that I've trusted and shared very intimate details about, my business with that like I don't go and blab out. And I think that's just really cool about our friendship.
Yeah. We were talking before we pressed record of what are some things we can talk about, some questions I'm going to ask you. And then you kind of get to a point where it's like, I feel like we just need to sit down and press record and go.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is very much turned into like a Morgan appreciation podcast, which I did not ask for. I'll pay you later. No, I did not ask
She's
for.
paying me a lot for this.
Yeah, for real. But just, as an additional encouragement for someone of like, you cannot live this life alone, because everything you've said about me, I feel the same way about you. Like, you have to have those people in your life that are not going to be high drama people and not going to be fair weather friends, but like finding those people. And I'm not saying this like it's easy to find those people.
No.
Like it was truly a gracious act of the Lord that he brought us together. And I'm saying that like we're married.
No, but
you have to have those people.
Morgan is 10 out of 10 relationship material, guys. Like, she is the full package.
Go ahead, pitch me.
Full package, 10 out of 10. I was at a wedding recently, and the best man gets up there, who is not bad looking, a doctor, and makes it clear he's very single. And you better believe I went up to him and I said, and I'm a vendor. I'm sure this was like definitely very unprofessional. I don't recommend doing this at weddings. I just figured, what do I have to lose? And went up to him and I said, my friend Morgan is a bombshell and she has her own business and she is 10 out of 10 material. And here is her number.
I love that you did that so much.
Yeah.
Still haven't heard from him. So
that's on him.
That's just totally on him. No, but like, I love that you look out for me in that way.
Oh yeah.
And there have been other guys that I'm like, Christa, that's really kind. No, thank you. Like it's not like everyone.
Not exactly that way that you said it. You've been a little bit more abrupt, but I always have my eyes out for Morgan.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's why you're so great.
And Morgan, I don't know if I've ever said this out loud past a certain group of people.
Well, here it is going to the world. So just go ahead and say it.
It's on record. If something tragic happens to me, I have told Edward, marry Morgan. If she's single and she's into you, now you do have to take care of my child if that's the case.
That does make me hesitate.
If that doesn't speak about Morgan's character, I don't know what will.
The only problem that we have in this scenario is that I feel like I've had this conversation with multiple girlfriends.
Yikes. So all the husbands be lining up.
I have more husbands to marry.
She's got a single options. Yeah, she's in
I feel
high
like that
demand.
must say something about me.
It does say something about you.
Anyway,
it's not just any friend that you would tell your husband
funny.
that you're married to hit up if you die.
I appreciate it. It's just really, really kind that we now have this recorded.
Yeah, it is.
So I'll be like, Edward, did you hear it? Did you hear it? Go back and listen to it. Listen to it. Started at minute 32.
I was going through Reels, and I don't follow this person. I'm like an old person, and I go on the Reels, not the TikTok. Okay. Yeah. So I see this person, husband dies, she marries his friend, and people are just hating her in the comments, which I'm like, okay, like that seems a little unnecessary. Yay for she has 4 kids. Yay for her for, truthfully, I don't remember who it was. I was just scrolling. Yeah. So now we have it recorded so no one can ever say he wouldn't have wanted, like, no, Christa wouldn't have wanted that.
We still don't know if he wants it.
he'll come around. Don't worry.
He's crying at the altar, but like not happy tears.
Christa wanted this. We have it on record. Played at the wedding. But anyway, man. Morgan, we've had so many fun memories. I remember when I had a wedding in St. Augustine, Florida, and flights were getting canceled because it iced, and we hopped into your Highlander and drove the icy 11 hours to get there the night before. Yeah. And
you were at my apartment in Greenville.
Yes.
And we were like,
I don't think we're going
to fly tomorrow. And so we packed up that night and drove like through the night.
Yep. And just so many great memories like that.
Also, the things you do like right post college that I probably would not do today. So know that. I feel like we're just not going to make it to that wedding. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. We know some photographer friends in St. August. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I would love for you to share a little bit about the transition specifically of becoming a mom and having your business, because I feel like we might have listeners who are moms of littles, but like they still have these aspiring dreams to do something.
Yeah.
Like what has that transition been like for you? Do you feel like you've had to step back? Have you wanted to step back? I don't want to get like super personal, but like is there like any mom guilt on any level? Like I just feel like this could be a really relatable conversation for new moms or moms with littles who like also want to go do something in the world besides being the awesome job title of being mom.
Yeah. Well, you get this, Morgan. When you have a business, it really is like your baby, right? Like it needs to grow. It needs to be nurtured. If you neglect it, bad things happen, right? It is kind of similar to a child.
Right.
TBH. I almost feel like I have two children that you kind of balance, right? And the other thing I'll say is it does look different. You and I were talking about this before to everybody. Yeah. And I by no means have it figured out in the slightest. I was in my pastor's wife living room a couple weeks ago just sobbing because I was like, I just am struggling navigating this. So I'll share a few things that encouraged me. These are not epiphanies that I've had, but I want to encourage you. The transition does look different for everyone in the sense of there are some people, and I've coached students who want to take several months off of work and just hold the baby. And if that is what you want to do, they will only be little for that long. Like that's wonderful. That's beautiful. I personally, truthfully didn't feel that way, where I loved spending time with my daughter and enjoying those moments when she was little. But I also did love checking in on my business. I've built that up. I've spent a lot of time on it. Part of my why is my daughter. I pivoted to education. I've grown my portrait average exponentially. I've gotten it to that point so that I can spend more time with her as we grow and build, and we can have awesome experiences with her, right? Like that's part of my why. Right. And so Morgan, as I was balancing that, those first weeks you are so sleep deprived that it was good. Edward actually really encouraged me to step back. And I think it's good my hands weren't in it so much that my VA was like, I am about to lock you out of your email. Like go away. Oh, wow. I've got this. And Morgan, the other thing that I think we forget as business owners is we're not heart surgeons. Photography, there's never an emergency. Coaching, there's never an emergency. If someone truly needs something so last minute, that often isn't our problem, right?
Right.
And I think we put that pressure on ourselves, and we have our emails on our phone and Instagram messages pop up. And we've all been at coffee with that friend and things are dinging and they're looking over and you know they're not with you, right? Like we really can't focus on multiple things. So in those first weeks, I was so sleep deprived. At one point, I picked up my dog in the middle of the night and was going to start trying to feed her. Like weird things
Maggie
happen.
was like, I was not ready for that moment. I saw things I did not want to see.
Right. Like weird things happen. And I have a very close friend and we do things very differently. It works awesome for her. Mine works similar for me. Morgan, one thing that really was something I knew from the beginning is I really did not want to work and watch my baby at the same time. I firmly believe as women, we have all these tabs open, right? And we try to do all these things and then neither are done well, right? And if we have, even if it's 30 minutes and we're kind of watching the baby, kind of working, I can get that same thing done in 10 minutes of not even having to worry about the baby and just powering through.
Right.
So that was really important to me from the start. And I knew I wanted to work towards that point of having childcare and having consistent childcare. For some, it looks like a family member. I did bring in a few family members, but due to different things, those weren't resources I wanted to depend on day in and day out.
Sure.
But I was building a business, like 4 months after I had my daughter, we had our biggest month ever, right? So I knew like, hey, I do need that consistency. Babysitters are great. They sometimes flake. So if you have really important things, like what do you do? So for me, we did begin childcare last month. And I want to encourage moms. I know it can be really challenging, but it's a place I trusted. Edward and I actually went there as babies. I knew they'd be okay. My nieces and nephews are there.
The same women are working there. So just really reputable women.
They've been doing this a long time. And I knew she'd be taken care of. We went and toured it and everything. And that, Morgan, I had a friend say to me that week, you are more yourself than I've seen you in a long time. Like just knowing she was safe, she was in good hands, I could focus on my business when I needed to.
Right.
And then go get her and just be completely focused on her was wonderful because as photographers and as business owners, we could be working on something 24/7. We wear so many different hats. Yeah. And it was hard when I had her home all day and thought, okay, every spare minute, I just need to check in with work and get a few things done. Okay. And then she's awake. I need to go do this. And that was hard. And we did do that for the first 4 months of her life. And actually, Edward, my husband, has a very flexible job. He would keep her for a few hours in the morning. And that's really when I would hunker down and power through. I would have her the rest of the day. But as you know, running, a business, it does take more than 3 hours a day, some weeks, right? To do it. And so that has worked really well for me as we've navigated that balance. But Morgan, the other thing that I've had to realize is the business will still be there if I need to take a pause and come back. And I put so much pressure on myself. And the thing is, it's not coming from my husband. It's very internal pressure. I want to see, you and I have talked about our differences in this. I want to see like how far I can go, how many people, you know, I can bring in. Obviously, I really want to grow my income. Like I have these set goals. Yeah. And that was hard for me too, to process, hey, this will be here to grow next year or in a few months or in a couple years from now. Right. And I've coached students who did that, who say, hey, I took that pause. I'm ready to jump in. I have one student like that, Morgan, and she did last year over $150,000 from portrait sessions with 3 little girls. And she's like, I spent so much time with them after taking kind of a pause. And I had to realize that too, of like, it is okay that I don't have the bandwidth that I did before, when you and I would just beep bop around and kind of do whatever, whenever. And so whatever that looks like for someone listening, that's okay. You don't have to feel guilt. Don't compare it to like a friend's journey. Don't compare it to, you know, maybe what someone in your family is doing. Find what works for you. Morgan, I was listening to this book, Hands-Free Mama. And I was listening to the condensed version of it. And one thing it said that I thought was really good, I think this is true for anyone. If you finish a day and you're like, that was a really good day, like things felt in alignment, I feel very fulfilled and maybe not even got done what I needed to get done, but I felt very fulfilled today. I would love to feel like this after more days. They said actually pause and journal about it. And I started doing that when I had a day like that, reflect back on what happened. And for me, it did look like I was very focused on my daughter during certain hours. Yeah. And very focused on work during certain hours. I love my job. I enjoy it. Now, I have friends where that might be different. It might be harder to go back to work for a job they don't really love and to begin childcare and that at the same time. That's so many changes for you and your baby. Like that makes complete sense. For me, I think that childcare shift was really helpful because we had been juggling both for a while. And this actually allowed me to be even more intentional with her. There's even so many studies, like children need eye contact. I don't want her to have the back of my laptop or the back of my phone memorized, right? I want her to, you know, when she starts having memories, and I want to build towards that now of like, even though I can't really take her to the park and like put her on the swings, right? I want to build a life and sustainably in that way so that when I do pick her up, I'm used to having the afternoon after I pick her up off to spend just intentional time with her. Those are things that have encouraged me, again, not by me, you know, figuring these out, but the advice other people have given that have worked really well for myself.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like in a lot of ways, I mean, you are as you go figuring it out.
So
I feel
much.
like naturally you are just a very driven and passionate and like a go-getter type of person. But I feel like what could happen if you have that, if you're like a driven person, that could be a con. You could be unhealthy in a way and kind of bulldoze through things to kind of get to the goal. And you are not like that. I feel like you and this is my time. I'd like to tell you, this is an intervention for you.
Yeah,
no,
thank you.
No, you are not like that. I feel like you do like naturally a really good job of compartmentalizing. Like, this is my business, this is my family, this is my husband, this is my daughter. And that might not come easy for some people naturally. So hearing you do that, I think is very helpful. They might also be thinking like, okay, well, easy for you to say like, it's hard for me to do that. But I feel like you've given such great like resources and advice of when you compartmentalize, like when you have your work and when you are being intentional with your daughter, your children, you're actually creating a more sustainable future because you're creating habits that is then going to help. And like you said at the beginning, like if you want to step back from your business and just be a mom. It's like the biggest thing ever, but like be a mom. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. If you want to pursue your business, that's great too. I think what's most important is number one, maybe don't make big life decisions 2 weeks postpartum. No, so maybe make these decisions before. And if you've already had the baby, that's fine. Like you can make a decision now.
It might change. Like you might think, yes, we're going this route.
But I think at the end of it, being like, where do we want to be? 10 years might be a little lofty.
No,
maybe 5 years. Where do we want to be next year? Okay, well, what do we need to do today to make sure that we get close to where we want to be a year from now, 5 years from now? And I feel like you have done that and you are doing that in the process of doing that. And I just feel like that is going to be more sustainable of a route for people, whatever their business is or whatever that other thing looks like that they want to add on to being a mom as well.
Yeah. And I feel like you and I have both had shifts as we figured it out, right? You've had different
I've had those shifts without kids.
Even different cities, Morgan. I still remember, I don't know how much your listeners know your backstory. I still remember when you were in Georgia and you said, I think I want to go back to Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I think that's a great idea. But like That's a big move. I mean, we moved 10 minutes away and that was like a big shift. And you've done that multiple times.
Yep.
And every time you've done that, it's just led to huge things, right? And us both being believers, like we believe the Lord led us in those moments,
100%.
right? And that's obviously a huge key. And just being open to that leading and that direction and like that pull in your heart is, I think, really key here too. And again, some moms, for instance, we just hired on a girl and absolutely love her. She helps us with the DMs and running things. Yeah. She had her son and she had been in a certain career path and had a master's in that career path, had her son and realized this isn't for me anymore. This does not align with where I want to be with my family and with him. And I don't know if she knew that before she had him. Yeah. And then came to me and said, this is the type of job I need. I want to be part of a company like this. I'm ready to make this shift. And I think that looks different. And I hear the other thing too of you hear all the time these women in these big, corporate jobs doing well. And they say, this isn't worth leaving my child for. Right. And it just looks different. Don't compare yourself. Don't, hold yourself to someone else's standard. And along with that have come, Morgan, so many lunches, phone calls, evenings with friends where I've been in tears, completely overwhelmed. What am I doing? This is really hard. This is so hard.
We're also just human and we're going to feel those feelings too. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I remember this is a really bad mom moment, but I had a call. Riley was supposed to be napping and she woke up during it and I'm watching her on the monitor and hear in the background just screaming. And I'm in the thick of it on this sales call. And it was what do I do? And I know listeners might say, of course you would stop the call and run and grab your kid. And in the midst of that, in the midst of the emotions you're feeling, also knowing she's safe, she's contained, she's fed, she's fine. Those moments are really hard. And picking her up after and just sobbing, being I failed you,
Yeah.
It's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
The real life moment of that has happened to you. It's not oh, well, my life is great. I put her in childcare and I work hard. No, these are still happening. And it is a moment by moment thing.
It is.
You're going to be home tomorrow working if tomorrow's a work day for you. And you're going to have to face a decision of, oh, what do I need to do next? Or do I need to go get Riley or whatever? So these are moment by moment decisions that you're making. And as she gets older, now we have preschool, now we have school. It only continues.
Yeah.
So I just think having a plan in place is great. I think it's so great that you have the support system of Edward. He is the most supportive, I was thinking about incredible guy.
Yeah, I think that's a huge key. We had actually planned to put Riley in childcare a month earlier. And we both talked and it was kind of I think we can manage this. There was a point, Morgan, and a low point where I told Edward, I can't do it all. I'm easing back into business. It was weeks after having her. I'm easing back into business and watching her full time. Yeah. And part of my business is doing calls with people, right? You can do a lot of things around naps and stuff, social media and different things, but calls with people, her naps were unpredictable as most newborns are, right? And I had no idea what I was doing. If you saw some of the things I Googled, DSS probably would have come in. So I'm navigating this and I got to that point where I was I can't do it all. Something has to give here. This isn't working for me, right? And I'm so glad that he came alongside and said, great, let's think of a solution. Let's not sit in that. How can we move forward? And his solution wasn't, well, you need to work less and you need to not care about your business more. And I'm so grateful for that because he knew that I wanted to keep doing this.
Right. And that brings you so much joy.
Exactly. He knew I needed to have something other than being her mom. That's me personally. That might look different for other people. Okay. Yeah. So what that looked like is he started watching her in the mornings till about noon. Yeah. And that was my power away, work hard time. We also split up shifts of when she got up in the night. Again, this looks different in how you're feeding your baby and such and looks different for everyone. For us, that worked. And doing different shifts. So he played a huge part in this. The thing is, I didn't have to drag him into this, but we did have to have that open communication of me saying, this is not working. Or he would maybe hear me wailing loudly. Come and help me and say, Riley and I are in there both crying and he's like, something has to give here. Yeah. And I needed that support. The other thing is really asking for help. I think sometimes new moms, you put so much pressure on yourself. You think no one knows the baby like I do. I need to figure this out or I'm feeling them. Yeah. No, you're taking care of a little human now, trying to keep it alive, trying to keep you alive. I had a C-section, some have traumatic births where I could barely walk. Yeah. It's so much to do. Yeah. And to have that support and ask for help. Right. If people want to bring you meals, let them bring you meals. Right. My mother-in-law one time just came over. We were in the same room because I had trouble going up and down stairs and just held the baby. And I laid on the couch and just napped right then and there. That's great. Yeah. Let people do those things for you. That's okay. I've had people on calls. Their kids are crawling over them and they're apologizing. I don't care.
You're I get it.
I get it. Yeah. And I've seen that and realized I really didn't care. If they said, Christa, someone's melting down and need to reschedule, that's great. I wouldn't have been annoyed. And, Morgan, the other day, I pick up the phone for a client. We're driving. Riley's napping. So I'm like, great, now's a great time. And of course, right when she starts talking, Riley starts crying. And I'm like, hey, I need to call you back. I'm not going to, this isn't working, right? And I got home, got her settled, and called her right back. And she was great with it, right? Yeah. And giving yourself some grace, not putting all that pressure on yourself for me is hard. Like you said, I take my business very seriously. Yeah. When I jump into something, I am both feet. I am in, let's go. Yeah. I've spent a lot on coaching because, and Morgan, to, speak about coaching and education, I signed on for my coach 2 days before I had Riley via C-section. I took a month pause and was, jumped in when I was ready, but I had that accountability of hey, I'm in this. I'm all in. Show me what I need to do and change. And so, having that accountability when it comes to business, but also people in your life checking in on you. My mom brought me Starbucks every morning for a month. When I
need that now.
That's what I'm saying. I remember the day she said, I'm done doing this. Yeah. And I was like, what? That's not fair. That's 30 days. It's right when you're addicted to things after 30 days. Right. Is that a study? Right?
Yeah.
It takes 30 days to break an addiction. So we've
and the addiction,
we created the addiction.
And to be honest, the addiction may have already been there before that 30 days.
Yeah, for sure. So when she said that, it was what do we do now?
Yeah.
So whipped out that Keurig.
No, but that's so encouraging to hear. Literally something that I was just told the other day is every marriage is its own country and speaks its own language. And I thought...
I'm not laughing. I'm just genuinely choking.
Please don't choke. Are you okay?
I love that.
Yes. Every marriage is its own country and it speaks its own language. And it's so good because you might be listening to this and being like, that is not what my home life looks like. And unless you're in an abusive, not good situation, that is okay that yours looks different. Right. Take this, just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, no pun intended.
Totally.
But take this for what you will and then run with it. But I feel like listening to someone else's perspective is so helpful.
Yeah.
And this has been so encouraging, just listening to you share how you're doing things while you're still doing it. Your baby is not 14. Your baby's still a baby. You are very much in this still and you're figuring it out as you go, but you're doing it. So share with everyone how they can find and follow you. And then another quick plug of the podcast episode that they can go listen to and where they can find that.
Totally. So you can find me on Instagram, Christa with a CH _Renee, RENE. The podcast is The Uncapped Photographer. Mm-hmm. So look for that episode or just search for Morgan's name and you'll be able to find it when we have it recorded. And it's going to be wild.
I'm so excited. Christa, I have one final question to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
Because the show is called Love That For You.
Love that.
We have to know what you're loving right now. So what are you loving right now in life?
Oh, Morgan. Oh,
no wrong answers.
No wrong answers. Okay. I have it.
Oh, great.
Okay, Morgan. This is very unique for me.
Love it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you know me. You know how much I like to sleep.
Yes.
I have started getting up before 6 a.m. Now, sometimes it's been 6:30 on bad days.
Do not love that for me.
But my goal is 5:30, and I want to get that to 5. And it's on a journey. I started that pretty recently.
Okay.
And I have this walking treadmill under my desk.
Yes. I've seen it.
With a standing desk.
Yes.
And again, it was one of those things where it's I hope I don't buy this and it just sits there, right? You see that?
Yeah.
And so in the morning, that is how I start work. I grab my cup of coffee, I turn on that walking desk, and I get a good hour and a half in before the baby wakes up. And I just read the 5 a.m. Club, and literally your brain is wired differently at that time. It's called the flow state, where you're just full.
This.
It's awesome. You're just full of amazing ideas. Yeah, the 5 a.m. Club.
Okay.
But you're just full of great ideas. Literally, there's different chemicals released in your brain. Then you're not as, worried about people aren't bugging you. They're not, checking in on you because it's so early. And you can get so much more accomplished and such a better vision for yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just with that shift. And I'm loving that. Okay. Where even this morning, Morgan, I woke up early to come here. I woke up even before my alarm and was just good to go. And now, Morgan,
what time are you going to bed?
I need to get better at that, but 10:30 or earlier.
Okay.
So,
because I am a pretty solid, I need 8 hours person.
Totally. And that can be a shift too. That can be really hard.
It's do I just need to back up and watch The
love
Bachelor
that
the next
life.
morning instead of I'm already an introvert.
Leave the club a little earlier, Morgan.
Put your clothes on and get in the car. We're going home.
Yeah. Sorry, Terry, if you're watching this. But she's not doing those things. Don't worry. But I've just been loving that. Getting up earlier. I walk a good 3 to 5 miles even before she's getting up just by standing there working on things. It's great.
I need to ride my Peloton more. So,
Morgan, I struggle with the stationary bike too. So I hear you.
Yeah. You have the Nordic track?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it still works anymore.
And they make the Peloton, that is the treadmill one.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like I need not quality. I just need to like get on. Like your treadmill, where you got it on Amazon?
I got it on Amazon, Morgan. Great. I think like $250 and great.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. This has been so much fun.
Thank you, Morgan, for having me.
I mean, I feel like we could talk for forever about a million other aspects of our life and friendship together and your story, but maybe we'll come back for a part 2 sometime. That'd be really fun. That. But for now, I'm so excited that everyone just got to hear the story of one of my best friends and what she's doing. And please go follow her, support her. What she's posting is incredible. The work she does is incredible. If you're a photographer wanting to up your game, her resources are a game changer. And then absolutely go listen to her podcast, the whole thing, but specifically our episode, because we're going to be getting down to the details of like, do we really need this? Should you really purchase this? How do you do this? So it's going to be a deep dive, and I'm really excited about it. So Christa, I love you, and thank you so much for coming on Love That For You and just being a light to, I know, so many people today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Morgan. I loved it.
Thanks for listening to this episode, friends. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the love with your friends and family. Remember, life is all about the stories we create and share, so let's keep spreading inspiration and positivity. See you next week.